Sure.
If you don't want to, I can kick off with like the kind of
No, it's fine. I'm just context switching in my mind, so just getting my bearings.
Okay.
I did catch up on the meeting that y'all had yesterday. Thank you for recording it. I appreciate that. And I'm super glad that we are all getting aligned on this because we're all doing content and all the things. So first and foremost, I want to say that I'm not trying to be a gatekeeper of Pathfactory and say, no, you can't have access. Obviously, we're limited on the amount of seats that we can provision. I do think we have some extra seats. I just need to do that user audit, and I can do that fairly quickly. I think I can pull that into this milestone, but I also have like 11 other issues in this milestone. So I'll take a look at that. Obviously, the more people that use Pathfactory, the better. However, I've laid out, and I've spoke with Jackie about this, and she understands and knows all of these issues, but our biggest issue to date with Pathfactory has been attributing and tracking campaign data and PF engagement back to the campaigns and the initiatives that are happening. What do you mean you're not sure you follow?
Oh, no, I'm not following.
Sorry.
Control Shift up down arrow. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be doing something.
Sorry. It was a side comment.
No, I follow everything you're saying, Sarah. Carry on.
Okay, yeah, no problem. But I spoke with Jackie in length, and she understands all of these issues. And this has been something we've been trying to solve for quite a long time. We use Visible for marketing attribution. There's not a native integration with Visible and Pathfactory. Robert and I have been working very closely with their solutions architect and their engineering team to try and band-aid together a solution. I think that I heard, and maybe this is Pathfactory, maybe it's another tool, but there might be a native integration with Visible coming on their roadmap in the future. But until then, we still have issues with UTM parameters from a PF link passing through from a digital ad to our website, through Pathfactory to Marketo, and all the way to Salesforce. So it's very difficult for us to understand, yes, Pathfactory is working, it's a great product, it's a great experience for the end user, but how is that actually contributing to our pipeline? That is a question that we're still trying to solve, and that's one of the biggest issues we need to solve for, in my opinion, before we can approach the ungating strategy with Pathfactory. The other piece of this is incorporating Pathfactory engagement data into our current lead scoring model. This is an issue. I've linked it in the agenda. That's already been created, and it's already part of Amy's work with lead scoring, her lead scoring revamp Epic in general. So you can take a look at that. And then the other two aspects to this, one is that Pathfactory's model for user roles and permissions is somewhat limited. When you have author role access, you have access to almost everything in Pathfactory outside of administrative type stuff like user management. So when I'm training folks, I'm introducing them literally to the bevy of options they can do in their role because they have access to it. That may not be the best training method, and I'm open to other methods to do that, but it can be extremely overwhelming for someone logging into Pathfactory for the first time and seeing all of the different, content tags, and there's add content over here, and you can create content tracks. What is a content track? How does that differ from an explore page? Like, there's a lot of terms that get thrown around. So I do think I need to work on a second iteration of that training to make it super clear. The other part of this is quality assurance, which was mentioned on the call y'all had yesterday with Erica. We do have open issues to do a content tagging audit, and I'm working closely with her team as they take more ownership on that. All of these pieces in a perfect world, if they were solved and we had the budget, I would open this up to literally everybody because it is a powerful tool and it should be used. It's there. I actually spoke with their product managers when I was going over the VEX demo, which is the virtual events experience aspect that they're rolling out. And they are framing it after, Netflix, Amazon, all of the big players that have already done all of this user experience research around essentially encouraging people to binge on content. So I do think it's a great tool for that. I think in terms of the visible thing, because to me, that's one of the most important aspects of this. I have a meeting with Robert and Reggie on Thursday of this week. And after that meeting, I'll know a lot more about how we can move this forward. But if we can't solve for that, that's obviously a big issue that we'll need to discuss, because how are we going to attribute this activity and using Pathfactory for all of the things back to actual revenue, which is what we all know Todd and leadership in the C-suite want to see. So those are kind of too long, didn't read summary of what I put in the agenda. Does anyone have comments or questions about that? Leslie, in general, I would like to onboard your team to use Pathfactory, but I want it with the understanding of these tracking issues, because at the end of the day, they can use Pathfactory to their heart's content, but I want them to be able to report on the success of actually using Pathfactory, which is my concern.
I don't know that I'm convinced that I want them to create their own paths, because if I'm really struggling with them in terms of like, if we're really focusing on B, C, and C and CI, I don't want them to go create all of these other things, then creating
that are duplicative,
or creating work that are not the company's priorities for other teams, like, you know, everyone on this call. So I haven't seen that this is a blocker for field marketing. I know as we're creating different workshops, it might make sense for us to create different paths for us to put those people in. But I would want the paths to kind of, and I don't technically know how to do this, but like, can we push them to a path that we already have created? Because I don't want the field marketers to be the DRIs for having to keep these paths also updated.
Well, and part of that too, I just want to point out that, you know, if they're going to the website and these teams, content, product marketing programs are already, you know, creating these tracks and things, you know, that, you know, your audience that field marketing is working with, they're likely being funneled to the website, and they may or may not actually go into a Pathfactory experience that's relevant to them because they choose it. And there's another tool that's coming out called Website Tools, which is going to use their AI to actually suggest content on the website according to the performance that Pathfactory has seen with our content.
One thing that I would just mention in terms of like the access, and I don't know that everyone should have access or what, I don't know yet, but I would say that when it comes to the segment marketing plan, there's a clear, like, we need to align as an entire marketing organization, and there's already become better alignment with content marketing, product marketing, technical marketing, like everyone thinking about these prescriptive buyer journeys. And where that fits in with field marketing is with campaign managers focused on top funnel MQL generation. We're thinking about the prescriptive buyer journey higher up in the education stage. And field marketers should be starting to get aligned with the content product marketing teams. Like every team should be thinking about and talking about content in the same way, because we may want to have prescriptive paths for MQL to SAO leads and people who are in like SAO to closed won if needed. Like, I think that everyone just needs to be speaking the same language and thinking about Pathfactory in that way. And so that's my one thing that I've been keeping in mind, is like, we haven't really talked about paths later in the buying cycle, but that should be something that we consider with the new segment marketing plan.
Leslie, forgive me for not having as much background on your team's focus, but are you focused more on middle of funnel stage for things? And in that case, would you then not really use the marketing program managers already created tracks because they tend to focus on top of funnel?
We really haven't focused, to Jackie's point, on Pathfactory and the late stage path. So I don't know. But yes, we are, in theory, we should be grabbing the MQLs from Jackie's team and pulling those through.
Because I was going to say, based on something Erica said in yesterday's meeting was about creating those tracks based on persona and
Segment.
wow, I just had a brain fart, y'all. It's stage, funnel stage. So persona and stage. So you could almost see like having that version control and collaboration content track as a top of funnel assets, but then you might have one that's version or VC&C middle of funnel and have different assets for that.
Do we not have, and this is maybe just like my lack of education, but I thought that every path like had everything. So when you start in it, it's top of funnel. And as you're spending more time in the path, then like it starts to get from awareness to consideration to decision. Oh, no.
Currently, yes, kind of. Okay, here, let me backtrack. We have barely spent any time on Pathfactory, if I'm being fully honest. Like we put assets into the content library and then we just throw them into whatever relevant track there is because we just need a link for somebody to use somewhere. When we shift to the prescriptive persona-based buyer journey, we should be limiting our tracks to have maybe 3 to 5 assets. We should be much more prescriptive. So it's not just this gamut of 30 assets and you can kind of figure it out. You don't get as many valuable findings from the assets when it's all kind of diluted with the opportunities that they could have to like click around. So the way that we have been using it, I would caution, don't think about it necessarily from how we technically have it set up right now, but what our future state is and what we are going to be doubling down on is prescriptive buyer journeys, which is where every team in marketing should be involved in that conversation and in what content should best drive leads through the funnel. And that's where the connection with product, everything.
And that's where we fit into this. I think it's real important that we're thinking use case and segment, and so not only use case, segment, and stage in the buyer's journey, right? Because the content I need if I'm trying to get educated about continuous integration, I'm interested in the topic of continuous integration. That's a whole set of stuff that's different from, do you want to buy GitLab, or do you want to know the GitLab ROI, or do you want to know about a case study of somebody at GitLab, which is much later in the life cycle in my journey. And so I think what we really have to do, and exactly what you said, Jackie, is we're going to have that ability to have multiple short and meaningful paths that we curate and manage, that we're more actively engaging and managing and curating. And that's what I'm really looking forward to see happen, because we have all this content, and I say the word content not to mean stuff that the content team produces, but I mean content as in words and graphics and videos and
assets
and
lots of assets
stuff. Yeah, like Don said.
Leslie, really quickly, I wanted to point out something that Jackie just mentioned about the types of tracks. So we do have funnel stage captured as a tag on an asset by asset basis, and it's set based on the content type. So if it's a white paper, it's always going to be like middle of funnel. I don't know what it is right now because I'd have to log in, but if it's white paper, it automatically gets generated as that. But what I've been communicating to different teams that have authorial access to Pathfactory, there's 2 different types of content tracks. There's a target track, which, as Jackie said, is going to have less assets. It's more personal, it's more curated, it's more targeted. That's going to have about 5 to 7 assets in it max. With a recommended track, it's using Pathfactory's AI and machine learning data to automatically bubble up content that's actually resonating with the audience, that they're actually reading. That's where you would put in, like 30 assets. And if you didn't know what was actually resonating with an audience, that would give you an indication of, okay, this is what's actually resonating with this audience. Let's go create a target track that has the 5 to 7 best performing pieces of content from that recommended track. That's really how those are meant to be used. So I wanted to kind of clarify that. But to answer your question from earlier, it's not the case where you would enter into a Pathfactory experience and it would automatically essentially push you down the funnel and based on those assets, unless they were put there by the author. Does that make sense? Okay. And honestly, I'm happy to hop on a separate call with you and dive deeper into it and answer all your questions about it, because I definitely want your team to be able to use it. I know they've pinged me a little bit, and wanting the Pathfactory links and stuff. So I want to make sure that your team is set up for success.
They've pinged you outside of you coming to our team call and being there to answer questions?
Yes, but not recently.
Okay, good. Good.
And
But I mean, but I want to just jump in. I want to ask a question, because I heard what Leslie said. I want to make sure I understand it. And is that what I heard, and y'all correct me if I heard this wrong, is that, and maybe this is what my interpretation is too, is that Leslie was questioning whether her team needs to be able to create and manage paths.
Correct.
Which, at least when she said that, I may not have been physically nodding, but I was virtually nodding my head, because at the end of the day, I would think that between what the campaign managers are doing and what we're doing in product marketing, what's happening in content marketing, we're going to be building the paths and building the flow of what we think is a logically curated set of things for someone to see in a given situation, which then Leslie's team is going to be one of the primary consumers of those.
Mhm.
Is that,
So
did I hear that correctly and think that correctly?
That was what was in my head. So thanks for saying that.
I mean, that's what I heard. I
No.
interpreted that earlier, and I was like kind of nodding my head, but I wanted to make sure I came back and validated what I thought what I was thinking.
No, and that makes sense to me. Honestly, in my mind, I think for me, it's a lack of understanding of field marketing's needs. And that's on me, and I need to reach out to you, Leslie, and clear that up. But
It's not a problem.
I thought that field marketing wanted to create paths for some of their one-off events and things. But if they're just wanting those generic, like aligned to the plan use cases that product marketing creates, then that we can absolutely make that happen. Now, I will say that I think eventually field marketing will want to be an author role access in the tool, just based off the virtual events experience feature alone.
Could be. And I have a third calendar reminder on my calendar tomorrow that says actually watch this. So I will say that part of this, I need to take them with me on this journey, because they think they might need to create these. But to everyone's point on this call, like, we all have to be in working together on one, we can't just keep doing one-off content. So I don't.
And to be fair, like the biggest reason why we have so many content tracks in Pathfactory right now is because of the tracking issue. We were not getting those touch points and the attribution that we were looking for. So we didn't even want to reuse some of those same generic content tracks. Then we started to create more content tracks for separate use cases each time. Now, that's not really an ideal way to use Pathfactory. You should be able to just create a generic content track with assets that every team can use, and then they just apply their appropriate UTM parameters to it. But the UTM parameters are the very important piece to this, right? Because otherwise you're using the same content track that marketing programs is using in their email marketing, but both of your teams are not able to distinguish those actions when it comes to actually reporting. So that's what I'm trying to solve for, and that's the biggest piece to this moving forward. And Claudia and Dara both have talked to me about the concern here is, like, if we can't, if we're doing all this work to try and band-aid together, Visible and Pathfactory together, is this even the right tool we should be using? Because obviously attribution is a big thing for us.
Sarah, can you explain it to me in language I could get? I'm trying to get my head around. I'm trying to get my head around that, and I'm trying to follow it. And can we make it? Can you abstract it? I mean,
yes.
if I have like, yeah.
No, and I'm sorry, John. I tend to.
No, it's me. Trust me, it's
but
me.
Essentially,
I just want to make sure I can kind of get the dilemma. So and this is part of my education too. I'm learning. I'm going to be learning. I'm going to be probably spending, based upon our conversation, yesterday? Is it yesterday? It was yesterday. Feels like it was a decade.
But based on the conversation yesterday, I'm going back to the Pathfactory education to learn. So this is I'm starting.
Great. Just before jumping into the technical piece, I want to clear up one thing, is that the intent of the team members joining this, I do anticipate we need a closer connection of product marketing, technical marketing, content marketing in terms of building the tracks with campaign managers. When it comes to field marketing, what I've seen is a lot of requests for things to be uploaded. And I recognize that actually submitting the issue and getting it triaged, like just submitting the issue alone, takes longer than it would to just upload it. So
oh yeah, if they're just uploading content and not creating tracks, I can assign somebody to your team to be in charge of uploading that content. That's not a problem at all.
But then I also go back and think, like, is there a more efficient way? Could we do a weekly upload where people add to a Google Doc that can be uploaded as a CSV, and then they put in the relevant details and we do an upload instead of one-off? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
No, yeah, that's definitely a great idea. I mean, obviously with the bulk upload feature, that helps with that. So, I mean, if you want to do that, I could just slot an issue into each milestone where it's just, here's, the 2 weeks for this milestone for me. Sorry, I'm speaking in marketing ops terms.
Let's take this offline. I think that there's going to be pushback that we need it uploaded immediately. And that's what's coming through to my team as like a, stop everything you're doing. I need you to upload this to Pathfactory. And so I'm like,
oh, I gotcha.
Efficient and solve problems for both sides. And that's where the access request is what could be. If there was one person who could do it, that could maybe move that bottleneck.
No, and I think that's a great idea too, Jackie, is to have like a representative from each team to have that access to Pathfactory and to almost be that champion for that team, because I'm one person, I can't be in 15 places at once. Though I am a business partner for all of you and I love all of you, I need your help, right? And I want to get you into Pathfactory, so it's a win-win. So I think next steps, Leslie, does it make sense for you and I just to have a discussion about field marketing's needs and seeing if, just to get content uploaded, if we could have a point person from your team to kind of take that on? Does that make sense?
Let's have a meeting to explore it, because I don't know. I don't know enough right now to know why are they wanting things uploaded. Why do they think they need things uploaded?
It's usually sponsored webcasts. Like, if I can join that conversation, I can speak to all the issues that I'm seeing coming through for Pathfactory that have alerted me to, like, maybe we need to have more open access. But I'm not sold on any certain role for other teams. I just want to have the conversation. And so that's what the purpose of this call was.
Yeah, please, if there are bottlenecks regarding Pathfactory at all for any teams, please, let's list those out and let's conquer them one by one, because I certainly want to solve for this, but just so everyone here knows, top of mind for me is solving for those tracking issues so we can make this even more efficient for everybody. And John, back to your point about the tracking, to put this in more simpler terms, rather than creating a separate content track that has the same assets for different use cases or different teams, we want to be able to create one generic content track that's VCNC that all teams can use and that properly attributes that activity to each of those respective teams. Does that make sense?
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk deeper about that.
It does. So hang on. Let me double click on this. Would I then also have a content track that would define VCNC top of funnel, as in educational, a VCNC consideration track, a VCNC decision track, in addition to the Uber VCNC track?
Correct. If they're different assets.
So I would have. No, same assets.
If they're the same assets, then that doesn't really make sense to me regarding the stage, because the assets.
Well, because nobody's going to consume the entire VCNC track. I mean, so everything that's VCNC. So I guess the point is that if I am, so let's just play this out. I am a developer who's trying to learn about Git and Git branching. And so I go searching for that. And I happen to be in a enterprise Well, I'm going to land, I want to find our white paper or our ebook that we write about Git and Git branching. Regardless of whether I'm in but I might be a enterprise, so we might want to segment this by segment too. I might want to break it down by segment. So imagine top of funnel, I could theoretically see us having 3 different tracks, one which is oriented towards enterprise, because the next thing after Git branching I want them to see, because I've decided they're enterprise, is something about compliance. And the next thing after that might be something about integrating security. I might want to talk about enterprise topics. Whereas if I'm talking to SMB, right, I might talk about there might be other things I want to mix in. So, but in theory, that same asset, that Git ebook, could show up in several different tracks, right? That's what I'm imagining. That's what I'm trying to get my head around.
Yes, one asset could potentially be in several tracks.
Yeah, and so when you said one big VCNC track, I assumed it was sort of a placeholder or a home for all the VCNC stuff. And then we would have the separate actual, I didn't think of the VCNC track, the long one, as being what would be necessarily delivering content to end users. I was thinking we'd have more smaller tracks for end users.
That is correct, John. And so I know that changes how we've been using Pathfactory, but we need to align on the prescriptive journey, shorter tracks.
100%. Yeah. And
Okay.
I even made a note to myself to change the folder structure from team to personas, use cases, etc. So 100% on board with that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot more discussion to take place. Like, I think that we're at the tip of the iceberg in talking as a team across all the different functions that are focused on the prescriptive buyer journeys and putting those journeys into our campaigns from top to bottom funnel. So there's, like, Sarah, you'll be on the call in 2 weeks and we'll continue that conversation. But
okay.
I think,
and I'll keep everyone posted on the things that I'm doing. On that front, I actually have to jump to another call, but I definitely got value from this, and I do think it makes sense for us to continue to meet and continue to work through these issues and align on our processes, etc.
Great. Yeah, thank you everyone for your time. I'll upload this to Unfiltered and share a link.
Thank you all.
Okay.